Good night. Good night. Good night. If you can hear me and see me clearly, let me know. Let's get into it. Good night. If you can hear me and see me clearly, let me know. This is the live that you've all been waiting for. If you're already here, please share this live. This is a very important live. Share this live to all your friends on whatever social media platforms you have access to. Today, right now in our country, we have a case that will determine the full legal framework of our judicial system. This case that we currently have happening in our country right now will set the tone for the relationship between our country, Guyana, and the United States of America. This case that we have in our country happening right now in Guyana will show the level of our intent to secure the rights of our people. It will show the importance and the relevance of doing what is right, ensuring that a person goes through the full legal process, ensure that the legal process is not compromised. The main thing that we have witnessed for years that's happening in our country, Guyana, is that the legal process, the administrative process of activities in our country has been compromised. It has been compromised by corrupt leaders, greedy leaders, self-serving leaders, and many of these leaders have been linked to unaliving of our citizens. Marcus Blue, good night. Good night, Marcus Blue. Caroline Smith, good night. Desi Smart Felix, good night. Ayanta Archer, good night. Bonita Elise, good night. Right? Good night to all of you. Please share this live, fellow ladies and gentlemen. Take a minute. I will get into it. I'm smiling. You know when I come. You guys know when I come smiling. I come to destroy people. When you see me come here, I'm smiling like this. I'm here to destroy people. So tonight, I am here to destroy, as I said in my post, I'm here to destroy the Attorney General of Guyana, Anand Lal. If I'm destroying him, I will destroy his puppeteers, which is Orphanati and Barajatio. And I have seen that they have hired international lawyers from Caribbean countries. They will be destroyed in this process too. I have said to you guys before, I'm not a learned, certified, trained bar member. I'm not a lawyer. But one particular skill I do have is exceptional research skills and capabilities. That's why you guys come to my live. Because when I present information, it is in depth, it goes deep, and it gives you the facts that you are looking for. So, without further ado, please share this live. I want you guys to share this live, and I want you guys to bear with me now before I go into this very strong and interesting presentation. I needed to do something for me. Please, this story is going to make you think differently about Guyana's politics and legislation and its correlation with the globally aligned partners with that of the US and the UK legislations, you will realize there's a whole dimension to this issue that mainstream media isn't covering and bringing to light. So please, please hit the like and follow button. If you're watching me on any other platform, Facebook or TikTok, please like, subscribe to my page, and share this video. Right? We're pushing right now. I've been told recently Facebook have given me the opportunity to turn my page into a professional page. So I have a professional dashboard. So now I have family and friends saying to me that I need to get a following to get these messages across to the globe. So I'm asking you, I'm doing like everyone else is doing. I'm pushing for 10,000 followers in the year 2026. So by just clicking like, following the page, following the Harpy page, following the Harpy on YouTube, and sharing the videos, you will be telling the algorithm that these are the stories that matter. These messages here is what's matter. Right? So these are the stories that need to be told. And I want you to do one more thing. When I'm done, I want you to go into the comments and leave a comment. Tell me what you think. Right? Did you even know about what I'm talking about? Right? And how do you feel about it? Right? I want you to add your thoughts in the comments. But remember, I always tell people, positive, contributive comments. If you come with nonsense and mediocrity, I will embarrass you and then I will block you. I'm very frank. I don't have patience like the other social media platforms. You come with nonsense, I block you. First, I will embarrass your intelligence, then I will block you. So I leave the comment there showing your embarrassment, and then I will just forget about you. So please, I want you to share the information, share the live, and let's get into it. Right? In my previous video on the Mohamed's extradition, I explained a few simple things about legal, legislation, and law. I will begin this very video by recapping on that and explain it in a bit more detail for you. And then I will detail the relationship of these explanations with the Extradition Treaty of 1931. In order for you to fully, I want you guys to get this, in order for you to fully comprehend what is legal, what is legislation, and what is law, and the legal system as a whole, I want you to please bear with me. This live might take a while and there will be some key terms that you may be lost about. I want you to please bear with me. Please be a bit patient to hear me out as I make my explanations very, very simple and clear so that every one of you, even your youngest child in primary school, can understand. I will begin this presentation by saying exactly what I said in the previous video. Here's the thing. There is no law. The laws you may think of and how you may interpret it does not exist. A law only refers to an established, proven fact. In some corner of history, it's called natural law or God's law. It's scientifically proven and understood and accepted without a contract. Well, for most of us, that is. So then, a man converted and wrote these natural laws into legislation to establish them as legal. That's how we arrive at what's legal. Again, in the previous explanation I said to you, at the bottom line, at the very bottom, legal simply means contract. So I say to you, there is no law. There is no law as you may interpret it. There is only what is called legislation. So now your next question would be, what is legislation, right? Legislation is simply corporate policy. In the previous video, I said to you, the United States of America and Guyana are corporations. We refer to them as countries, but they are corporations. England is a corporation. St. Vincent is a corporation. Barbados is a corporation. Canada is a corporation. Australia is a corporation. All countries are essentially corporations. And these corporations simply have what the legislation that they have is simply called corporate policy. Where does legislation come from? It comes from a legislator. A legislator is a person who is offering you legal terms, law. They're offering you legal terms, which is law, within a contract. So now, since you now should have an understanding, the legislation is simply corporate policy. It therefore means that all countries are corporations, as I just said, right? The legislation of each particular country, as I discussed in the previous video, may be different because each country is a corporation operating within a corporate jurisdiction, which is not the land. Within these corporations, many of the legislation is supposed to be signed off and accepted by a corporation administrator, member of parliament. The corporation administrator is the member of parliament who is supposed to announce it as law. That announcement is called a proclamation. They proclaim this policy into existence because it is not a natural law. So these are non-binding contracts that are not natural laws, so they have to proclaim them by way of contractual legislation by a member of parliament who is a corporation administrator in parliament, and they proclaim them into law, which basically means this contract is now extended to you via the government who actually signed the contract, because you didn't sign no contract. Mohamed didn't sign no contract with America to extradite him. You didn't sign no contract with America to deport you. You didn't sign no contract with your neighbor for nice nuisance. You understand? So when they proclaim it into law, they forcefully put it upon you by the way of what we call the legislation, by a proclamation. So you did not enter that contract. They enter that contract by themselves and then proclaim it onto you forcefully without your will. And when you do something that does not align with that contract, legislation, corporate policy, they charge you and say you are guilty. So, let's continue. Please again, bear with me guys. You need to understand these terminologies to get the full understanding. I said to you, this is the picture, the understanding that the Guyanese people need to have. You need to have the foundation knowledge to follow these things, to understand how the Attorney General is tricking you with words. How these lawyers go to court and they bamboozle you. Next thing you know, you're sitting in a cell somewhere in a jail. So here we go. Therefore now, an extradition is basically a corporate contract between two corporations, America and Guyana in this case, who share the same or similar terms of corporate policy, offered to you as a contract in the form of legislation that was proclaimed into existence by a corporation administrator, which is the member of parliament. This explanation applies to all legislations everywhere in the world. So let me say it again. An extradition is basically a corporate contract between two corporations, in this case America and Guyana, who share the same or similar terms of corporate policy, offered to you in the form of a contract. This contract comes in the form of legislation that was proclaimed into existence by a cooperation administrator, which is a member of parliament. And as I said, this explanation applies to all legislations in all countries in the entire world. So let's get deeper. Hence, the first question to ask the Attorney General Anil Nandlal. Let's get into it. Now, we get in there. Please, as I said, bear with me. Now, I want you guys to remember, as I said earlier, please share this live. Please share this live. Please be sure to like and subscribe to the page. You understand me? I need you to share this live because this story is going to make you think differently about Guyana's politics and legislation. Its correlation with globally and that of the UK and US legislation. You realize there's a whole dimension to this issue that mainstream media isn't covering and bringing to light. So again, please share this live. Now, the first question the Attorney General Anil Nandlal, who hired the state lawyers, the first question to ask the Attorney General and these lawyers and the US is, why must Guyana adhere to the 1931 US-UK extradition treaty? Let me read that question again. Why must Guyana adhere to the 1931 US-UK extradition treaty? The very obvious and lawyer answer to the question would be that the British Guyana was a British colony administered by the British Crown, which is the United Kingdom, on behalf of the British Guyana, who entered the 1931 US-UK treaty, extradition treaty, a treaty between two sovereign states, which is the US and the UK, which was ultimately extended by the UK to British Guyana in 1935 as a colonial practice, because British Guyana itself was not a state, it was a territory. Now, you must understand that the treaty itself, I think I have the treaty somewhere. I have the treaty. Now, the treaty itself clearly states in article, the treaty states in Article 14, there is an argument. Let me put it this way. For all those persons out there who are not aware of this, I said to you, when I come to you, I give you all the facts and I go as deep as I possibly can. Right? Here is the intelligence in this treaty. This treaty was a treaty of His Britannic Majesty. The treaty was the Treaty of the Britannic Majesty, which basically was the King of England. And this treaty was between him and the US. When they entered this treaty, they said that this treaty under Article 14, that it may accede to present the treaty on behalf of any of his dominions hereafter named, that is to say, and there's a list of all the countries that the treaty applies to in Article 14. Now, they didn't finish there. There's some people right now, there's some people right now arguing that the treaty does not apply to Guyana because Guyana was not listed in Article 14 of the original treaty. That is a falsity. Because in Article 15, further down in Article 14, it clearly says that the treaty, right, Article 16, sorry, my bad. It's further down, I'm trying to find it on my screen, right, so I apologize. Further down, it says in Article 16 that the treaty shall apply in the same manner as if they were possessions of a Britannic Majesty to the following British protectorates, or what we would call dominions. And there's a whole list there in Article 16 of all these different dominions. Then they went on to say In Article 17, if after the signature of the present treaty, it is considered advisable to extend its provisions to any British protectorates other than those mentioned in preceding article, which is Article 16, or to any British protected state, which would include British Guyana, or to any territory in respect of which a mandate on behalf of the League of Nations has been accepted by His Britannic Majesty. So therefore, to dispel the argument is that some people are saying that the treaty lists the names of the countries that it applies to. To dispel that argument, Article 17 of the original treaty is saying it can apply to Guyana because Guyana was one of the colonial dominion states of the British Guyana. So I've just dispelled that argument, right? Anyone who've heard or saying that Guyana is not listed in the original treaty, I just said to you that yes, it can apply to Guyana because it clearly explicitly states that in Article 17. Now, let's get back. I hope you guys got that, right? I hope you guys got that. I keep saying during this live, please, it's a lot of information. It's very important. Bear with me. I will get deep into the application of the treaty with the Mohammeds. The real reason for this is to show the invalidity of the treaty. The invalidity of the extradition treaty that they want to use to extradite Mr. Mohammed or the Mohammeds. So that's the purpose of it. So stick with me. We're getting into it, but you need to first understand the legal terminologies and what is really happening that no one else is doing like what I'm doing here for you. So that's the first question you're going to ask Anil Nandalal, right? Why must we adhere to the 1931 U.S. extradition treaty? The answer is what I just gave to you, is that basically they're going to say that in Article 17, the first thing in Article 17, it can apply to us because we will be considered one of the dominion states of the British rule back in 1931, and right? So therefore, the first narrative that Attorney General and the PPC government want citizens to accept is that ratification itself creates obligation. However, under Fugitive Offenders Act Chapter 1004, ratification alone does not make an extradition treaty legally binding. So, before we go into that, we have to look at something called succession, right? Because the treaty itself, when Guyana became an independent state, they would have wanted to adopt the treaty, and in order for Guyana to adopt this treaty, now you would have to deal with something called succession, right? And let me see quickly if I can find some information to explain to you from a more legal terminology basis about what succession really is, right? So I will make a quick check and I will get into that for you right now about succession, right? Let me see quickly. Let me see if I have some notes on succession. So I will look for it here quickly. Bear with me, give me 1 minute. I will look for those notes quickly. I'm looking for the bit of note on what is referred to as the succession, right? It's okay. I think I found it. I think I've got it, right? I've got it, right? I've got it. Good. I've got it. Thank you for being patient. I've got it here. I'm going to highlight it. I'm going to highlight it in red so I don't miss it. All right. I'm going to highlight it in red. I'm going to highlight the succession in red. I want it in red. Come on. Red. Alright, I'm going to give it. Good. Here we go. The succession. Right? We're going to look at the succession. Right now, extradition treaties. I have a note here. I'm going to read it to you. Extradition treaties require heightened consent because they transfer sovereign power. Extradition, right? Extradition is among the most sovereignty of intrusive actions a state can take. So because it's a sovereign action that a state takes, extradition treaties require heightened consent because they transfer sovereign power. Now, Rickford Burke, someone please tag Rickford Burke in the comments or share this live to Rickford Burke, because I'm going to make a reference here that includes Rickford Burke. It's very important. Rickford Burke has been talking about this guy, about a member of the ICJ who went to Guyana, and Rickford Burke is saying that this guy is now corrupted because he has shown some form of partisan alliance to the government of Guyana. Now Rickford Burke is on point, and I'm going to explain to you. I'm going to just give me a minute. Let me step away from the presentation to tell you what Rickford Burke is doing and why Rickford Burke is what the information what Rickford Burke is giving to you is correct, and you should listen to it and pay attention to what he's saying, because what Rickford Burke is saying is very vital. It's very important for you to know, right? He's basically saying, what's happening here? What's happening here? I think, oh, I just saw what happened. I just saw what happened. I just saw, sorry about that. The screen just jumped in its own direction. So I might have to get up and do a little adjustment on it. I was looking at this thing that Rickford Burke was saying. Just give me 1 minute. Let me just touch this thing. Yes, guys, sorry about that. I apologize. Let me fix my little bit of brace here. Yes, I apologize. Apparently your people are at work. Apparently your people are currently at work. What we've noticed, myself and a few other social media personalities have noticed, is that they've been restricting. I cannot directly prove this, but from the last time my account was hacked, from the last time my Facebook account was hacked, the information that was given to me by the person who works at Facebook, who restored my account. I met this person face to face while I was doing some work, and the person said to me that the government of Guyana has hired a lobby firm who is using their influence in the United States with the private companies, for example, Facebook, TikTok, and all these others, to restrict us from sharing certain vital and important information. So what I just said to you, let me go to Facebook to look for the post Rickford Bork made. And the minute I logged into Facebook from the desktop, the minute I logged in from the desktop, it's all chaos, guys. It's all chaos, right? And that is what the person is basically saying, that they have your IP address and they're using that IP address to hurt you. They can log into your stuff. They can, you know, they monitor you. They're monitoring us, right? So it's creating problems for us. I can recall having conversation with Melly Mel when she was telling me about a few of her accounts were hacked and she couldn't get them. I offered to help her with that. She never responded to me on that. But right now I'm doing this live with you, and right now whilst talking to you, they're attacking me. So it's causing my system to freeze. It's causing my system to freeze, and I am not able to access the information I have to present to you right now, because I have a few thoughts. You know how I do stuff. I come and I say what I have to say, but I normally have talking points, and I'm trying to access my talking points, and I can't access my talking points because for some reason or the other, I just disconnected the internet and reconnected it, because that's what happens. Once you connect to the internet, they're hacking us. Yes, they're hacking us. They went into my account. Let me tell you what they did. They created these fake business accounts. They went into my Facebook. While I'm talking to you, I'm trying to have the system restored. Okay, guys, so bear with me. They went into my Facebook account, and what they did, someone says go to YouTube. To go to YouTube, it will take me a while because I have to go into a different account. When it's a different account, I can go into I have to go into a different account and merge Facebook to that YouTube account, so I can share also to YouTube. I don't have the same following on YouTube, so I can't just, if I do a live from YouTube right now, half of you might not be able to follow it, or you might not want to go over there to follow me, right? June St. John said go to YouTube. So I'm trying to maintain this live right now here with you on Facebook. So please bear with me, give me a minute, right? Please give me a minute. I was telling you that they went into my Facebook account, and when they went into my Facebook account, what they basically did, they created these business accounts in my Facebook account, and they sent up purchases in my Facebook account up to $500 plus US. And because of that, my Facebook business account, my ad account, was suspended because they hacked it. Now let me tell you how presumptuous they are. The account, when they changed the email, I was explaining this to another social media personality, Dunstan. You guys know Dunstan Wilson from News Guyana 24. When they went into the account, what they did, the email that they used, they're so barefaced. The email that they use, the email begins with a B and it ends with a J. So when Facebook, normally when they block the email basically says bj@gmail.com, bj@yahoo.com. So that's the account they're using to hack us. So I'm trying very hard right now to get this thing out of the way. Let me get it out of the way so I can get back to you guys. Okay, give me a minute, please. Bear with me. Right, I'm ending the task. I'm disconnecting the internet on the desktop. So when I reconnect it, I can be able to access the information online that I want to access. Right now they are totally messing with it. Someone says I'd follow on YouTube. Nothing like a start. The name of the page on YouTube, the name of the page I have on YouTube is the Harpy. Alright, it's the Harpy on YouTube. You can go there and you can like and subscribe to the page. I can get you a VPN. Who is that? Christopher? Alright, inbox me, Christopher. We'll talk about that. I have a VPN, but I only use the VPN on my phone. So my phone is more secure than my desktop. Right? I only use the VPN on my phone. I only use my desktop to do documents and so on. The laptop, I've put it aside. They've been hacking all of our equipment. I mean, I never came here and go into all that details with you guys, but they make a mess of us. Right? They're using whatever means, all the means necessary and possible to destroy us. Right? Someone said something else there. What was that? What's that? Someone just said something and I missed it. Someone said something. I saw something important there and I missed it. Sorry about that. I'm trying to scroll to find it back. Something said something about a treaty. I saw something. Someone said something about the 1931 treaty just now. I'm trying to find that back. Come on. This thing is taking so long. This thing is taking so long. Tell you what, I'm gonna do a really bad job at it. Alright guys, give me 2 minutes. Now the system completely shut down, it's restarting. Right, so what we're discussing here, I'm waiting for the system to restart. What we're discussing here tonight is the invalidity of the 1931 British US extradition treaty that the government of Guyana is trying to tell you now directly applies to Guyana and Guyanan citizens of Guyana. So there are many arguments out there about. The first and most important argument is the validity of the treaty. The second argument is if Guyana directly stands as a benefactor or a inheritor of the treaty. And the next argument that is being presented is the legality of the treaty in terms of its ratification and adoption into law in Guyana. The next great argument, the next great argument is about the treaty is that does the treaty contain specific or explicit statements of dual criminality that can determine whether the Mohammeds can be extradited for the charges, the assumed charges, the allegations that were brought against them. So in the last video, I also said to you guys, please stop calling. I mean, I came before, I said, Mom is a criminal. I mean, I did it because I did certain things because, I needed to get a certain message out there. And I say criminal because I can prove it. I literally can prove many of the things that I have accused the very same Mohammeds for. Right? It's my... When I said to you guys, there's a guy, the person named Giant. This person named Giant who worked with the Mohammeds and he eat provisions laced with diesel. I can prove that because Giant is one of my workers and it's my personal friend. So I can say, yeah, he's a criminal because it's what he did. I can prove because I know the police, the workers. I can prove because I know the security of the Mohammeds who beat the workers. I know that security personnel. I can prove that. So I can validly say that yes, I can prove that these things did happen under the watch of the Mohammeds. But a lot of people are saying, I'm coming here today to defend the Mohammeds. How is it that in my previous videos I came here and I attacked the Mohammeds, but now here I am defending the Mohammeds? People, you need to understand that I only deal with the fact. I don't take sides. I don't meddle in opinions. I don't meddle with mediocrity and stupidity. I come here and I present the facts. The facts are simple and clear, that which I can prove. Now, doesn't matter who the individual or individuals are. If I see something is being done wrong, I will address it. In a previous video, there was this incident that's happening between Darwin Best and Amanza Walton, and that's a major issue for everyone. And Amanza Walton started to twist the narrative. I came here and I addressed that, and I called her out for twisting the narrative. And I noticed I tagged her in one of my recent posts, and she has went ahead to remove herself from the tag. That confirms her guilt. If you do not want to follow and deal with the facts, then it confirms your guilt. So let's get back into, I got the system restored. Let's get back into what we're saying. I was saying that the first question to ask Attorney General Anil Nandlal, the hired state lawyers and the US is, why must Guyana adhere to the 1931 US-UK extradition treaty? The obvious legal or lawyer answer to this question would be the British Guyana was a British colony administered by the British Crown, the United Kingdom, on behalf of British Guyana when they entered in the 1931 US-UK extradition treaty. Right? So I went into the actual treaty and I explained that to you. Right? So the treaty, now I was going to explain to you guys what is the succession. Right? I was going to explain to you the succession. How come that they're trying to tell you now that this treaty is directly succeeded to Guyana. So in order to understand that, I was trying to get to Rickford Burke page to get the name of this guy. I was trying to get to Rickford Burke page to get the name of this guy that he's been talking about from the ICJ. Now, to put it into context, the PPPC is trying to cover their bases. They know that even if they win the case in Guyana, Mohamed's going to move to the appeal court. They know that even if Mohamed's win or Mohamed's win or lose in Guyana, the case is going to go to the appeal court in Guyana. They also know whether Mohamed's win or lose, whether the government will or lose in the appeal court, the matter will still proceed on to the ICJ. So what the PPP has done in advance is what Rickford Burke is talking about. Rickford Burke is alleging that they have conspired to bribe one of the judges of the ICJ. So Rickford Burke has already come forward and called out the PPPC for that. And that is what I was trying to reach to get to you on Facebook, so you can have an idea what Rickford Burke is talking about, how it actually links back to the entire case. Right? So Rickford Burke is basically saying, hey, listen, you guys, the Attorney General and Government of Guyana, the President of Guyana, has reached out to this guy, this guy from the ICJ. I'm trying to find the stuff from Rickford Burke page. This guy from the ICJ, and they have deliberately, by his presence in Guyana and showing his social mingling with the government of Guyana, it compromises his integrity as a judge of the ICJ. So Rickford Burke is on point. He's totally on point when he's saying that this judge, I got it. It says here, the CGID demands that CCJ President Justice Winston Anderson be recused from all cases where the PP government or government leaders are a party or resign. So basically, Rickford Burke has jumped ahead of the conversation to show you guys that the president of the CCJ, Justice Winston Anderson, has already been compromised by the government of Guyana. So even if the Mohamed's case passes these local courts in Guyana, pass the repeat appeal court in Guyana, and goes on to the ICJ, the PPP has already reached out reached out to the president of the ICJ. This is what Rickford Burke is alleging. I'm telling you, Rickford Burke is alleging that the president of the ICJ has already been corrupted by the PPC government. So I wanted to get that part in so you guys will get an understanding of how the case and what I'm explaining is linked to what Rickford Burke has posted on his social media page. So now, let's get back. The reason why I had to mention that is because I'm about to talk to you about the ICJ. I had to mention that because I'm about to get into the ICJ. So, the extradition treaties require heightened consent because they transfer sovereign power. I explained that just now. Now, here's where it goes with what Rickford Burke is saying. The ICJ principle says that, the International Court of Justice says that a state cannot be compelled to surrender a person without clear mutual treaty obligations. Now, what that means is, it simply says that there is no contract. Remember I explained to you the contract. There is no contract because Guyana never signed, adopted, or reaffirmed the treaty with the US. It was only ratified with the US. Guyana's non-consent by lack of explicit legislative incorporation, diplomatic notification, and executive confirmation invalidates US reliance on the 1931 treaty. So, the ICJ, I want you to get this, the International Court of Justice has previously said that a state cannot be compelled to surrender a person without clear mutual treaty obligations. The government of Guyana obviously know this. So what Rickford Burke is saying, that the government of Guyana has jumped ahead to influence the president, Justice Adams, or Justice Anderson, to influence him just in case the case reaches the ICJ and Dexter Todd, Nigel Hughes, John Dujan, Darren Wade, Vera, in case all of these lawyers raise this statement here from the ICJ, the government of Guyana has already colluded with the president of the ICJ to refute or rebuke this statement by the ICJ. I told you guys I'm here today to destroy the PPP. I'm destroying their plans. And I'm showing you how the plans they have with the chief alleged plans that they have, which is highlighted by Rickford Burke. I'm showing you now how it ties into the conversation I'm having here with you with the ICJ. Because if the case reaches the ICJ, if as Rickford Burke is alleging that the president is now being corrupted and he should not oversee any case from Guyana, then therefore this statement by the ICJ can be corrupted, allegedly corrupted, if Justice Anderson is part of that decision making. So let's go on. Let's go on. Added to that, Guyana's domestic law, the Fugitive Offenders Act, Chapter 1004, does not incorporate the 1931 treaty because continuity is optional. It is not automatic. The continuity of the treaty is not automatic. It is optional, right? Continuity applies only when the successor state, Guyana, explicitly adopts existing treaties. Guyana never adopted the 1931 treaty through legislative incorporation, diplomatic notification, and executive confirmation. Thus, continuity cannot be assumed only by ratification. Somebody please tag attorney Anil Nandalal, tag Barajagtio, tag Orphanali, tag what is one name, Kwame Mokai, tag all these PPP people. Share this live on the PPP page. In simpler words, as I've said at the beginning of this conversation, there is no contract legislation that binds the Guyanese citizens to the treaty that declare the treaty as legal. Furthermore, British Guyana pre-1966 was a state under international law. Thus, was not a state. British Guyana, our country, was not a state under international law. Therefore, Guyana was incapable of treaty succession. We cannot get any treaty succession because Guyana was not a state. It was a dominion territory, just a territory. So there cannot be any treaty succession because Guyana was never a state. By legal definitions, what is a state? Guyana could not have succeeded the treaty because Guyana was not a state. That again invalidates the succession theory of the treaty that Anil Nandalal and these lawyers are going to present in court. There are 4 types of state succession. 4 types of state succession. I have it somewhere here. Now, yes, I found it. Succession of states in respect to treaties, succession of state property, succession of debts, and succession of archives and records. So in Guyana's case, the succession of states in respect of treaties, they want you to think applies. These state successions are governed mostly by customary law and the Vienna Convention on succession of states in respect to treaties of 1978. Guys, please, I said to you, bear with me. A lot of these legal terminologies you might become wary of and you might want to leave the live. At the end of the live, I will be submitting all of this into layman's terms and I will put it into one sentence. But for the purpose of professionalism and for the purpose of those persons who want the details, I have to do this. So those persons who might be impatient and get into the final conclusion, please bear with me. Right? I need to do this for people who want the details. So the problem with that is that Guyana is not a party to the Vienna Convention. So Guyana cannot acknowledge it. Guyana cannot acknowledge state succession because they're not a party to the Vienna Convention and the treaties of 1978. Right? Guyana do not have a contract to these treaties. So if Guyana, I keep telling you about a contract, right? The contract. I explained to you in the beginning what is a contract. If there's no contract, then it's null and void. Under customary law and Montevideo criteria, colonies are not states and cannot inherit treaties. Independence terminates colonial treaties unless expressly adopted. Guyana never adopted the 1931 treaty through legislative incorporation, diplomatic notification, executive confirmation. Thus, continuity cannot be only assumed by ratification. In simpler words, there is no contract legislation to declare the treaty as legal. Right? So, that there is to deal with the succession of the treaty. I explained to you the treaty and what countries the treaty applied to, and they want to say that when Guyana got independence, it was Guyana gained the treaty through succession. So therefore, it clearly says, I explained to you there, Guyana could not have gained this treaty through succession because Guyana was not a state, it was a territory. Therefore, it could not have inherited the treaty. And the ratification of a succession state does not also apply. Right? So let's go on and look at something called the Fugitive Offenders Act. In the topic there, I have the Fugitive Offenders Act. Now, the narrative within the first narrative of ratification, the government of Guyana, the Attorney General, and the lawyers that they hired will want to say to you, come and say to the court and to say to you that it has been ratified. This thing has been ratified. However, under the Fugitive Offenders Act of Chapter 1004, ratification alone does not make extradition treaty legally binding. Now, here are the facts. The Fugitive Offenders Act 41A. Hear what it states. An arrangement made prior to 1966 extends to and remains in force in Guyana before the Act applies. The Fugitive Offenders Act, Chapter 4, Part 3 says, a ministerial order must recite and embody the terms of the arrangement, remain in force only as long as the arrangement remains in force, and serve as conclusive evidence of the treaty's existence. Now, what are the implications of that? Even if Guyana, the Attorney General, is going to come and say, this treaty is legal, it's in law, and it was ratified, and it can be used and applied, so therefore Mohamed can be extradited. You know that's how he starts, right? So, here are the implications. Even if Guyana ratified the treaty in 2025, no treaty comes into force unless the minister issues an Fugitive of Offenders Act order that embodies it. Forgive me, but I have not seen anywhere, and I have not read anywhere, whereby the Minister of Security, the Minister of Security, issued the Fugitive Offenders Act order that embodies the ratification. It ratified, but there is no order that embodies it. Next implication. If such order does exist, now I said I didn't see it, right? Now let's say this order exists. Even if this order does exist, none has been published or gazetted. The order has not been published or gazetted. I haven't seen it. I have researched it. I can't find it. If it is somewhere, I'll tell me where it is. So if it is not being published or gazetted, then the ratification only equals to symbolic representation. It is not legal. So therefore, if it has not been ratified, then therefore it is not binding. No arrangement exists under the Fugitive Offenders Act. This is another thing you got to understand. For it to be ratified, the treaty cannot be enforced if it has not been published and gazetted. The extradition request lacks legal foundation. Thus, under domestic law, under Guyana law, ratification without incorporation remains non-binding. So therefore, Guyana is not bound to the UK-US 1931 extradition treaty. Now, these are the arguments that Attorney Anil Nandalal and the lawyers that they hired are going to run away from. But these, I hope that you tag the lawyers of the Mohammeds, if you're still here, tag the Mohammeds, tag their lawyers and tell them, come here and listen to arguments that they can present in court to win the Mohammeds case, to nullify the extradition. If we can nullify, as long as the lawyers can nullify the existence and the validity and the legality of the extradition, there can be no extradition. So these arguments I'm putting forward here are legal arguments that shows how and why the validity of the extradition and the extradition treaty can be nullified. Guyana never signed, adopted, or reaffirmed the treaty with the US under the Fugitive Offenders Act 4, Chapter 4. Guyana never did that. Therefore, since Guyana never did that with the US, the ratification does not equal to automatic adoption. The ratification does not equal to incorporation into Guyana's local domestic laws. The ratification does not equal to the treaty being enforced in Guyana to extradite the Mohammeds. Under the Fugitive Offenders Act, the only valid act that binds Guyana is a ministerial order embodying the treaty in terms, published and remaining in force. Now, this is the missing contract I keep referring to. You see, at the beginning of the conversation, I explained to you what is a contract, right? So this is the contract I am talking about that does not exist. If the contract between the two corporations does not exist, then the treaty does not exist. It is non-binding. Somebody clap. Put 2 claps in the comments there for me. Put 2 claps in the comments there for me. Because this is powerful information. This is what the Attorney General Anil Nandalal is talking and hiding from telling you. And those liars that come that they are paying how much millions of Guyana dollars to represent to fight the case. This is the argument that they can duck and hide from. Show me the contract. Show me the contract. The Fugitive Offenders Act does not override the clean slate doctrine. Fugitive Offenders Act allows incorporation of pre-independence arrangements, but only if they remain in force in Guyana in 1931 has to be proven to do so. The liars have to prove this. Guyana's ministry issues an order adopting it, and the order is gazetted. Show us the contract. Let's see these contracts that the government of Guyana, Corporation Republic of Guyana, entered with the Corporation United States of America. Show me the contract. The second narrative, the Attorney General, now, Anil Nandalal, listen, I could read Anil Nandalal. Here the next narrative. Here we gonna come and tell y'all. Anil Nandalal gonna come and tell you. Here we gonna come and say. The second narrative he gonna come and tell you is he wants you to believe and accept that we the people must accept because of state succession. We must accept this treaty because of state succession. Right? And I explained to you before that the state succession is basically says a colony has become independent, therefore they must acknowledge treaty succession as a newly independent state, which means they are automatically bound by the treaties signed by the colonial power, which is called continuity. Nonsense. So this second narrative you can come with, you can come and argue for us about the ratification, which cannot alone secure extradition by itself. Right? Then you can come and argue about the Fugitive Offenders Act, which again, they have no contract to prove. Then again, you're going to come and argue about the treaty succession, which of course I just said to you, does not secure extradition. Does not secure the fact that Guyana is part and parcel of the treaty. But here is what your second question must be. Hear this question. Show us the contract that the government of Guyana signed with the US when our country gained its independence. Show me the contract. If you want to, if Anil Nandalal is going to come and tell you that we inherited this succession, then you still will need the contract that the Guyana government signed with the US. Show us that contract. They're going to say the ratification is the contract, but the ratification does not equal to automatic consent, adoption, and integration into local law. Therefore, it does not ultimately bind Guyana to the treaty. Ladies and gentlemen, I dare the learned, trained, certified Anil Nandalal to challenge me on this. I'm not a learned, trained, certified liar, but I know how to do research, and this is my presentation. Now, guys, y'all must take, I want y'all to take time to understand what is happening. I want you to understand the difference between lawful and legal. It's important. You must learn the difference between lawful and legal. I explain to you in layman's terms, whenever you hear the word lawful, it means natural law or God's law. That's all the natural rights afforded to you when you are born. To breathe, to walk, to run, to claim land to occupy, to forage for food, etc. And not cause any harm or hurt or death to end another equally acknowledged living being. The word equally is important. It refers to a man like you, because you can kill a cow and eat it. You can kill a deer and eat it. You can kill a fish and eat it. You can cut a tree and eat it. Those are your natural laws. Natural laws and natural rights. Legal, as I mentioned, in terms referred to as a contract. And I keep telling you, it is not legal if there is no contract. So if someone says to you, you can't do this because it's illegal, the next thing you should ask is for that person to show you the contract you've agreed to that says you will not do that particular thing. Since there is no contract, they will then presume or assume you have a contract. Now, all laws and all legislation in the world is built on the premise of assumption and presumption. That is the premise of all arrests and all court proceedings and sending you off to a jail. Now that I've brought you to this point, we're going to enter into directly more into allegations, the charges, and how they come about. So, this is the point of presumption and assumption. Someone presume you or assume you have done something. I will deal with the simplest aspects of the Mohamed's case and all cases in the entire world. Now, let's put the presumption and the assumption into the context of the Mohamed's case. Presumption and assumption is based on what is referred to as circumstantial evidence. What the United States of America has against the Mohammeds is what we refer to as circumstantial evidence. The circumstantial evidence is based upon the presumption and the assumption that these actions were committed by the Mohammeds. So therefore, it equals to an allegation. It is the responsibility of the person, the agent, the agency, the corporation, the country, well, corporation is a country, who's making the presumption or assumption to prove the circumstantial evidence based on the merits of the issue raised as a fact, establishing empirical evidence beyond the reasonable doubt of a collective group of persons called a jury or a single adjudicator, which will be a magistrate, a judge, or an arbiter. In the instance of the Mohammed's case, it will be a magistrate in Guyana and a judge in the US. These individuals have to receive evidence beyond a reasonable doubt to validate with empirical evidence the presumptions and the assumptions of the United States government. That's a very, very difficult task. Now, here's a summary of these facts. We get into the end. We are already almost to the end. But remember I said to you in the end, I'll give you the layman's explanations. But short and simple. Now, here's a summary of the facts. 1. Guyana never adopted the 1931 Extradition Treaty. 2. Guyana's non-consent invalidates U.S. reliance on the 1931 Treaty. 3. Guyana is not bound by the 1931 U.S.-UK Treaty. The 1931 UK-US Treaty was between the US and the UK and not Guyana. This is because British Guyana was a colonial state. It had no treaty-making capacity. So that is number 4. At independence, 1966, the clean slate doctrine applied to Guyana, meaning Guyana starts fresh. There is no treaty succession. Number 5. At independence in 1966, Guyana never signed and ratified or formally adopted the 1931 treaty afterward. Ratification was only recently completed. Number 6. Guyana's domestic law never incorporated the treaty. Number 7. The U.S. cannot enforce a treaty in Guyana that Guyana did not consent to. Number 8. This is pure international and constitutional legal arguments. So those 8 points nullifies the treaty by itself. These are the arguments that the Mohammed's lawyers need to adopt. The Attorney General and the government of Guyana and the lawyers that they hired and the US will argue that there was a reaffirmation in the 1990s. You guys heard about that too. Now in this video I said to you, I am touching all the facts. And I'm looking at all the things that they've been telling you to tell you that this treaty is legal and this treaty is within order and they're doing the right thing. I have so far nullified the ratification. I have nullified the treaty succession. I have nullified it actually being incorporated into Guyana's law by order and proclamation and legislation. And now I'm going to nullify I'm going to nullify the 1990 reaffirmation. Now, the 1990s reaffirmation of the treaty, basically all it claims is that the U.S. the U.S. Embassy, United States of Department, county sheets, some Guyanese officials, and some court had some court submissions, but there was no new treaty. Show me the contract. There was no new treaty. Show me the contract. There was no formal ratification in the 1990s. They did it until 2025. But a ratification alone does not validate the treaty. There was no continuity in the declaration, and there was no parliamentary incorporation in 1990, and today there still is no parliamentary incorporation. Even though they want to tell you it's incorporated into the Fugitive Offenders Act, Chapter 1004, there is still no orders, legal parliamentary orders and gazetted orders. Therefore, it does not exist. It's still not legal. They will argue, Attorney General, the lawyers, the PPP government, and the US, they will argue that in the 1990s, Guyana and the US reaffirmed their extradition relationship because Guyana handled several cases during that era. They're going to say, well, it was in force, it was in play because we did it. Both states acted as if the treaty was still in force, but it was not in force. Therefore, the treaty is operative. The treaty is operative by state practice. Even if not formally ratified, it was operative, but it was not legal. Show me the contract. This is a factual political argument, but not strictly a legal argument. Even if it's operative, it's a factual political argument. Treaties can exist on legal basis and political basis. It was just political cooperation, but it was not a legal contract. Show me the contract. These arguments of reaffirmation is basically what is referred to as operational practice. The reaffirmation of the treaty in the 1990s is the operational practice, and legality does not mutually inclusively apply. Therefore, the legality does not exist. They describe the difference in the levels of binding force. Now, the legal validity basically says the treaty does not have full force under international law because what? There is no actual contract. It was never incorporated into Guyana's law, and it was never, orders were never published, and it was never published and gazetted into Guyana's law. It does not exist. There is a reaffirmation. There is nothing else. There is no incorporation into domestic law. They want to say that incorporated into the Fugitive Offenders Act, but the Fugitive Offenders Act by itself is faulted. I just explained to you above how it's faulted. So, you can have one without the other. Yes, you can have a political arrangement like you did back in the 90s. But since there is no legal arrangement, since there is no contract, it is illegal to extradite the Mohammeds. And remember these. Remember, these state successions are governed mostly by customary law and the Vienna Convention on Succession of States with respect to the treaties. But like I said before, the problem with that is that Guyana is not a signatory and party to that Vienna Convention. Therefore, I say to you again, it is very clear Guyana do not have a contract to such treaties. Under customary law and Montevideo criteria, colonies are not states and cannot inherit treaties. Independence terminates colonial treaties unless expressly adopted, incorporated into domestic law, consented, orders issued, and it is officially gazetted. And that has not happened in Guyana. Therefore, the treaty is invalid and it does not apply to our country. Now, I want to take you back to the ICJ. Let's go back to the ICJ. And I want to give you what is referred to as jurisprudence. There's this legal term people talk about, the jurisprudence of the court. The jurisprudence. Now, the jurisprudence, Mr. Anil Nandalali, I'll tag him. The jurisprudence of the ICJ. There are three specific cases I want to make reference to. The jurisprudence of the ICJ specifically outlined three cases. What's his name? Gabsikovo and Nikamaros of 1977, whereby the ICJ states, state practice cannot create treaty obligations where no valid succession or consent exists. Y'all see why the PP trying to influence the ICJ, President? The ICJ jurisprudence in a Namibia case in 1971 states, colonial era treaties do not automatically bind the successor state without explicit acceptance. Ratification alone does not mean it is accepted and consented and incorporated into local law. So ratification does not apply. You see the ICJ saying? The ICJ also said in Western Sahara in 1975, colonial legal instruments lack binding effect without sovereign consent. I just said it. There is no consent. Ghana did not consent to it by incorporating it into their local domestic laws and having it ordered and published and gazetted. Therefore, it does not exist in Guyana's law. There's a ratification of the old treaty. And there's an incorporation in the Fugitive Offenders Act. But the Fugitive Offenders Act and the ratification still does not give merit because it was never officially ordered, gazetted, and published. If it was never officially ordered and gazetted by way of a legal instrument, it is still null and void. It's just paper. It's just words on paper. So, even if the 1990s cooperation, the treaty remains non-binding, even if there was arrangements where they extradited a few people, it still remains non-binding. Guyana is not bound by the 1931 treaty because Guyana never signed it. Guyana never acceded to it. Guyana never incorporated it into domestic legislation. Independence legislation presumes a clean slate, and extradition requires explicit sovereign consent. Guyana and the US didn't renegotiate a new one. There's no contract between Guyana and the US. They didn't renegotiate no new treaty. They relied on the old framework informally. They used diplomatic and judicial cooperation. That's what they did. And then now, since 1990, they come now, 2025, because they want to extradite the Mohamed, and they say they're going to ratify it. Now, let me show you the political targeting. Now, the ratification does not attempt to secure de jure treaty obligation, but there is no de facto extradition relationship and obligation. Right? In a courtroom, what this simply means for the Mohamed case or the defense is simple. Let me read it again. The ratification in 2025, this year, does not secure the jure treaty obligation, but there is no de facto extradition relationship and obligation. Right? So, in the courtroom, Mohamed's lawyers, right, what this means for them is simple. No treaty exists in force. There is no treaty currently existing in force in Guyana. Extradition has no legal basis because there is no explicit incorporated domestic legislation. This defeats jurisdiction entirely. US ain't got no jurisdiction over Guyana to extradite this man. Now, what it also means is that the past practice in the 90s does not create treaty obligations. Even multiple extraditions in the past do not create a treaty rule. And this is by the ICJ. The ICJ is saying that it does not create a treaty rule. Even if you do it in the past by political arrangement, it does not, the validates continue that you could do it in the future without legal arrangement, without a contract. Next point. Extradition requires strict legal contract, legal compliance. Courts cannot rely on informal affirmations, like what Anna Landwell going to tell you about, and or any ratification or deprivation of liberties of the citizens of a country. Dual criminality, we keep talking about dual criminality. Dual criminality is irrelevant without a valid treaty. If there is no treaty, you shouldn't even have no conversation about dual criminality. Since we are establishing here that the treaty is null and void, you can't even begin to establish dual criminality if the treaty doesn't exist and it is not incorporated into domestic law or domestic legislation, adopted, consented to, ordered, signed, and gazetted. Before examining offenses, you must prove the treaty exists not only by ratification, Anil Nandalal. You understand? You cannot prove the treaty exists only by ratification. You have to prove the treaty exists by way of a contract, legal contract, which basically says that Guyana incorporated the treaty into domestic legislation, adopted, consented to, and of course published by way of official gazette the contract of the treaty. And that has not been done. If that has not been done, then the whole argument about the validity of the treaty is simple. The treaty is null and void in its application to Guyana. So since no treaty legally exists, the explicit incorporation into domestic law and legislation, there is no contract. That's why I had to explain to you guys what's the contract. There is no contract, which means it's illegal. If the government of Guyana extradite the Mohammeds, it will be illegal. The request of the United States of America to extradite, the request by the United States to extradite the Mohammeds must be dismissed by any learned, competent magistrate or judge in Guyana. Dismiss it. It's null and void. Now, as I said, I'm not a trained, learned, certified bar member. I'm not a lawyer. But I am a very good researcher. I'm saying this because that's what has been told to me. And from the work that I've done in the past, what I'm currently doing and what I know, there's no people is going to buy, hey, I got this proposal I want to do. I want to do this proposal for me. I got this UG project, Chedi. I want to do this thing for me. Chedi, I'm going to do my master's. Help me do my master's project. People come to me. I don't have a master's there. But people at universities who had a master's and people who had a doctorates and people who are politicians and lawyers, they come to me and ask me for advice. So that's why I'm the doctor. That's why they call me. That's why I'm the doctor. I didn't ask for that name. They give it to me. I didn't come out here and call myself the doc. People give me the name doc. So, summary of this whole thing. please remember to share this live. Please, if you're still here, share the live. Share it to your friends, family, share it in your groups. Share it in your WhatsApp status and stuff like that. Share it to your WhatsApp friends. Share this live because encourage persons to come and watch this video because I've explained in detail all the basic facts. I've broken down the law. I've broken down the treaty, the existence of the treaty, the succession of the treaty, the ratification of the treaty. I have looked at the Fugitive Offenders Act, Chapter 1004. I've shown the implications of the Act. I've shown how the terms and the arrangements in the Act are nullified with regard to the treaty and its existence in Guyana. And I am about to summarize all of this. And I'm going to say to you before we go, it is important for you to understand how the recent ratification of 1931 Extradition Treaty and the Fugitive Offenders Act, Chapter 1004, affect the legal picture. Again, I say to you, ratification creates a formal expression of approval but does not by itself bind Guyana unless it satisfies the Fugitive Offenders Act requirements. I then said to you that the Fugitive Act requirements are not explicitly stated. And they do not explicitly bind the treaty to itself. So an argument must remain in force in Guyana. I want you guys to, anybody tell you Mohamed should be extradited because they got the treaty, keep this in mind. Here is your argument in the Mohamed's defense. The Fugitive Offenders Act. The Fugitive Offenders Act. It requires a few simple things. It must be incorporated via ministerial order. That order must modify, limit, or adopt the arrangements. The arrangements must be embodied in the order, making the order conclusive evidence of its existence. The order must be gazetted. If that has not been done, then the Fugitive Offenders Act, again, with its incorporation with the 1931 US-UK Treaty, is automatically nullified. That is your defense for the Mohammeds. That is the summary. Now, the Fugitive Offenders Act therefore makes incorporation, not mere ratification. Anil Nadalal can come again and say, hey, wait. Here comes Anil Nadalal again. The Fugitive Offenders Act makes incorporation, not mere ratification, the legal trigger for the binding extradition. We have incorporation by the Fugitive Offenders Act, and we don't have a ratification alone, so we can extradite the Mohammeds whenever we're ready. We just need to let them know when we're ready and we're going to extradite them. Now this becomes important throughout the entire case. I want you guys to get this. This one little issue that the lawyers that the government hired and Anil Nadalal is going to come and tell you, this becomes very, very important in the entire case because every argument I've made here are the same arguments the Mohammed's lawyers will be making, which stands. They will stand unless the hired lawyers representing the government of Guyana proves this. Here's what the government of Guyana have to prove to nullify everything I just said. Everything I just said in defense of the Mohammeds. The government of Guyana and their lawyers have to prove the 1931 arrangement remains in force. It satisfies the Fugitive Offenders Act, Article 4, 1A. They have to prove a ministerial order exists, and the order recites and embodies the treaty terms under Fugitive Offenders 4.3. If any of these elements is missing, then ratification has no legal effect on the Guyana's law. Now let's see if these elements are in the order. Let's look at the Fugitive Offenders Act and see if those elements are inside of the order. And remember, these elements have to come under the Fugitive Offenders Act 4.3. So let's go to the order. Let's look at the Fugitive Offenders Act 4.3 and see what 4.3 says. It says every order made under subsection 2 shall recite and embody the terms of the arrangement in consequence of which the order is made and shall remain in force so long and so long only such arrangement remains in force, and may such order shall be exclusive evidence that the evidence and terms of blah 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 blah. No, that's the end of it. But when we go back here, it says that a ministerial order exists. It says the order recites and embodies the treaty terms. The order recites and embodies the treaty terms under F04A. The Fugitive Offenders Act 4.3 does not recite and embodies the treaty terms under Fugitive Offenders Act 4A. Our Fugitive Offenders Act 4.3 says is this: every order made under the subsection 2, right? Subsection 2, where after the commencement of this act, an arrangement is made by the government of Guyana with the government of a foreign territory relating to the extradition of fugitive offenders mentioned. Now, by order declared that the provisions of this act shall apply in respect of extradition from Guyana and from the foreign territory. Now, there's no recites. There's nothing recited here. It says here that they have to prove that the order recites and embodies the treaty terms. There is no reciting of the treaty terms and embodiment. So here again, it doesn't exist. So the ratification has no legal effect because the legislation does not recite the treaty terms. Therefore, the ratification is null and void. Therefore, the ratification alone cannot revive a colonial treaty that Guyana never adopted under the Fugitive Offenders Act. I hope y'all tag the lawyers of the Mohammeds and they're watching this, because I actually given the Mohammeds lawyers the whole case. I given them the whole case on a platter. I given the Mohammeds the whole case to win the case on a platter. Now, this ratification and state succession argument that I've put forward to you will then stand. A colony is not a state. Therefore, a colony cannot inherit treaties. Independence resets treaty obligations. Guyana never adopted the treaty in Parliament. The Fugitive Offenders Act requires a ministerial order, which is missing. There is no ministerial order, which is missing. And the ratification does not change these. Ratification attempts to give the treaty legitimacy, but the Fugitive Offenders Act limits that attempt. Thus, the ratification does not override customary international law. The ratification does not bypass Parliament. The ratification does not cure failures of treaty succession. The ratification does not satisfy the Fugitive Offenders Act unless embodied in an order. Please, y'all tag the Mohammed's lawyers. Tag Vera, tag Hughes, tag Dujan, tag Todd. Y'all tell them Dr. Chetty just revealed the winning points for their case. I just gave you the winning points for the Mohammed case. I give you all the points to nullify the treaty, nullify the ratification, nullify the Fugitive Offenders Act, and therefore nullifying the entire extradition. I just gave you the whole... I better go and study law. Now this US. Now the US. I mean, we done yet. We get the summary, but we're this close. The US gonna come now and argue that Guyana ratified the same treaty in 2025. This is how the US can come and say, the only defense the US have is that Guyana ratified this treaty with them in 2025, this year. Therefore, the treaty now has force. But here is the argument. Here was the argument I put forward for the lawyers of the Mohammeds. The argument that I put forward still stands and remains factually correct under the Fugitive Offenders Act 4.1 to 3. Ratification means nothing unless the arrangement remains in force from colonial days and it is adopted by ministerial order. And there is no adoption by ministerial order and published gazette. Therefore, the ratification and the Fugitive Offenders Act don't have no merit. Now, since Guyana has never issued such an order, Guyana never issued this order, the ratification is legally incomplete. The ratification is incomplete without the order. Now, all legal minds must take not the operation practice cannot substitute, must take this. Here I want you to understand. The Mohamed lawyers and any person with a legal mind or any learned person who understand these laws and these legislation, and I'll explain it. You must understand that operational practice cannot substitute for Fugitive Offenders Act incorporation. This is consistent with the ICJ ruling that I cited above. The Fugitive Offenders Act Chapter 1004 confirms that without a ministerial order, the treaty does not remain in force. The act itself, the Fugitive Offenders Act Chapter 1004, telling you that if there is no ministerial order, the treaty does not remain in force, and there is no ministerial order, therefore the treaty is not in force. Without incorporation, ratification, which it basically equals to a non-binding paper expression. This is all it is. The treaty is not operational in legality. It's only politics. That's all it is. And now that I've said that to you, it will bring me to tell you why it is political targeting. Everything that the government has done is just simply operational politics. Nothing is legal. There is no contract. So the ratification itself and all is not enforceable in the treaty. They make no sense. Now, let me put this in one sentence. Let me put this whole let me put this thing in one simple sentence. One simple sentence. If anybody asks you, can the Mohammeds be extradited? Anybody asks you if the treaty is valid? If anybody asks you if the treaty is legally binding and there's a contract between Guyana and the US government, this is your answer. Here is your answer. One sentence. Guyana and the US cooperated informally in the 1990s. But Guyana never legally adopted or succeeded to the 1931 treaty. Therefore, extradition cannot legally occur unless Guyana first proves the treaty is in force through proper constitutional procedures. Everything I just said to you for the past hour or so, that one sentence sums it up. And that, if anyone asks you, why you think the Mohammeds can be extradited by? You think the US will get them? Who you think? You just say to them, Guyana and the US cooperated informally in the 1990s and they extradited a few people. But Guyana never legally adopted or succeeded to the 1931 treaty. Therefore, extradition cannot legally occur unless Guyana first proves the treaty is in force through proper constitutional procedures. Ladies and gentlemen, please share this live. I have come to the end of this presentation, and they are and they will be the average stupidity the diseased persons. As I said, they will want to come to the comments and they will want to say, Mohamed's pay. Oh, he get buyout. Listen, ladies and gentlemen. I only focus on the facts. I focus on injustices and where things are being done wrong. So to validate this, you can go to my Facebook page from 5 years, 6 years ago and look at everything that I ever presented. And you'll see within there, I have attacked the Mohammeds in 4 videos. But now I have presented 2 videos in the defense of the Mohammeds because I can clearly see Mohammeds have done things that I can prove they have done wrong. I can prove it because there are people directly connected to me who are the witnesses and the person who experienced the hurt. In a previous video, I said to you that Arif Mohamed, the uncle of Azuddin Mohamed, the brother of Nazar Mohamed, stole gold from 2 old Myconi pensioners by illegally mining their land. I called them out for that. That is a criminal matter because those 2 old people got ill. Their hearts broke and they suffered mental fatigue. That is hurt. That's a crime. They received hurt. They went on medications. So I can come here and say, yes, I can attest and provide evidence against the Mohammeds that they have done things to people directly connected to me and who I know that they've directly hurt. But in these 2 videos, I am defending the Mohammeds because now the government is attacking them wrongfully. So I have a right to even though they have done wrong to people in my circle, I still am obligated to do the right thing, to come here and defend them. So to all those naysayers and all those stupidities and disease people who are going to come and want to say, oh, you pay, you buy out and all this nonsense, I am just simply doing what is morally correct. A man can commit a murder today and serve his sentence for that murder, or can be found not guilty due to lack of evidence for that murder. But then that same man can come tomorrow and stand in a shelter and serve people food. What he did there is wrong. It must be acknowledged. He should be punished for that known fact that was wrong. But if that same man decides to come to the shelter and volunteer to share food to the hungry and the impoverished and the poor and the weak and the needy, that man must also be acknowledged for doing that good. And if anyone attacks the man while he's doing that good, the people attacking him will be wrong. So that is the basis of me doing these 2 videos in the defense of the Mohammeds. I don't work with them. I'm not associated with them. I'm not a member of a party or anything of the sort. I am simply doing what is right. So I wanted at the end of this video to say something to you that I've said in a previous video. In a 2000 and 2001 labor survey of the working population in Guyana, it is stated in that survey that 46.1% of Guyana's working population that they investigated only completed primary school. There are many persons who have watched this live who will not understand many of the legal terms and the analogies that I've used. Those persons might fall within that 46.1%. So that is why I said at the end of this video, I will take time to explain to those persons' level of understanding, that 46.1%, what this whole video really means. The whole video really means that the treaty between UK and the US is not applicable to Guyana because When the treaty was signed between the US and Guyana, Guyana was a colony. Guyana could not inherit it because Guyana was not a state. Guyana was a colony. This whole conversation now for the 46.1%, the conversation is also saying that the treaty was used in the 1990s to extradite a few people, but that was done by political arrangement. It was not legal. Those persons were extradited illegally. There was no contract. There was no legislation to validate it. So lawyers who represented those persons in 1990 should raise, I don't know, it's a long time ago, I don't know, but we need people to challenge the treaty. For those persons who are very slow in understanding all those legal terms, again I said the 46.1%. The third thing you need to know is this. The government of Guyana is claiming that the 1931 treaty is effectively enforced under Article 4, subsection 4(1)(a) of the Fugitive Offenders Act, Chapter 1004. They're trying to tell you that. Now, the very same Fugitive Offenders Act is saying that there's certain criteria within Part 3 of Section 4 that must be met. And one of those conditions is that there must be an order and published in the Gazette to validate the legality of the treaty, which is the contract. That never happened. So the Fugitive Offenders Act is invalidated to substantiate the treaty. The next thing they're going to say, they're saying, is that the ratification that was done in this year validates the treaty. A ratification by itself without incorporated domestic legislation, official published consent, and official orders and published gazette does not validate a treaty. So the ratification by itself is also null and void. So as it is right now, by legal terminologies, by legislative terminologies, and by official gazette orders, the treaty is invalid. That's what this conversation is saying. So for all those of you who did not follow all those legal terms at the top, that last explanation there is for you. So if they ask you, that is what you say. Okay? Thank you very much for coming. Please, if you have not followed my pages as yet, please click like on this video. Please share this video. Please follow this Facebook page. Please look for the Harpy right here on Facebook. Look for the Harpy and follow the Harpy page. Go to YouTube, please. I'm asking you go to YouTube and follow the Harpy also on YouTube. Right? Because sometimes I make other videos with other explanations and I post them to the Harpy page. Sometimes I post articles. Sometimes I do different stuff in between the two. So please remember, I need you to do this for me, because this story, as I said in the beginning, this story is going to make you think differently about Guyana's politics and legislation and its correlation with globally partners as in the US and UK legislation. You will realize there's a whole dimension to this issue that mainstream media isn't covering and bringing to light. So please hit the like and subscribe button now. If you're watching this video on Facebook or TikTok, please hit the follow button right now. As I said, I am pushing. I've been encouraged to become more public with my ideas, with my presentations. So I'm pushing for 10,000 subscribers and followers for 2026. And every single YouTube subscription, Facebook and TikTok stories that I put that says that you click like and share, it says the platform and the algorithm that these are the stories that matter. These are the stories that need to be told, and I want you to do one more thing. Drop a comment. Remember, a positive comment. Drop a comment below and tell me, did you even know this was happening in Guyana? Did you even know these things about the law? And your thoughts I will take them very seriously in the conversation. I respond to you appropriately. If you come in my comments with nonsense and mediocrity and disrespect, I will approach you in the same manner with mediocrity and disrespect, and I will then block you. I will report your comment and then I will block you. I don't have time and patience for nonsensical, mediocrity and idiotic people. I come here and I engage in very meaningful, interesting and educational conversations. My presentations are extremely detailed, very, very simple to understand, and of course, when you leave here, you leave with a lot of information that dispels all the tabloidism and the lies that you're being told. So, ladies and gentlemen, again, thank you for coming. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching this live. I say to you, good night. Good night. Good night. Thanks again. Share the live, follow, and subscribe to all my pages. Thank you very much.